For too long now, Roblox horror has been disgraced, lessened by the likes of games such as Break-In, Story, Piggy, and now a flood of whatever these midnight games are. Like, seriously, like what the heck? There was a hope when doors came out of nowhere and provided quality content, but even they have left the genre to die. What? Well, now I have to check this out. Yeah, I could do this. This doesn't look that bad to me. I could do this. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. This is doable. Yeah, I could do this. This isn't that bad, yeah? No? Cutscene? No? I could do this. Oh, and the minecart. Yes, Wow, this doesn't look that bad. Oh, oh, wait, no. What's this? Oh, no, yeah, I could do this. Uh-huh. Yes, pro developer here. I can do this. I could totally do this. I started out by importing the entire map okay, or we can start from scratch. Okay, I opened up a new studio and got to work immediately. I messed around with the skybox and the base plate. Now, obviously, it's important I include you every step of the way during this development cycle. I'm gonna make sure that you see everything that or I can just skip to the textured model. But from now on, I promise you, I'll show you every single... Nope, never mind. We're already up to this point. I forgot to record. Ended up making various movement animations, but I also went in to script new things like sliding doors. And the whole thing is supposed to be modular, meaning it'll be easier later to make more door systems. Obviously, the next step was to add these hazard suits that the player could wear, although in retrospect it looks familiar. Now, I would never take inspiration from another game, but I did make an elevator ride down for the first part. Although, in my defense, the nightmare was encoding this thing. It's a little iffy in the code section of the elevator scripts. At this point, I still had no idea what sort of game I was making, except that it could be a Doors knockoff, so I just continued with basic prop making. Obviously, it's a terrible idea to make the game before knowing what it's about, but me in the past wasn't thinking and decided to make it a problem for me in the future, which happens to be me right now. But I did know that every good horror game had a great AI system, or at least an AI system. So, I got to work to making the best pathfinding system I've ever done, and that being the only one too. Yeah, he's a bit dumb. I'm thinking I'm gonna call them Seekers, since they'll basically be chilling in their place or they'll be walking around until they find somebody and lock onto them like a targeting missile. The scripting itself, though, was very close to giving me brain cancer, and I'm certain that I'm gonna toss it and redo it before this game releases, but again, that's a problem for future me. Eventually, our good friend became capable of pathfinding around walls and creating looped routes between the nodes that I've made. I'm using items called attachments as these nodes, and what the AI does is that it compares all the distance of nodes, if there are any walls between them, and if it's already been to that node. It gets more complicated, but just because I have brain damage from writing the code doesn't mean you should get it from me explaining the code. Now that Buddy over here can navigate, I decided to switch gears and make animations, so he isn't just sliding all over the place. This is my first project where I'm really trying to learn how to make animations, but I am getting better at it. He does look much more polished when he has the animations playing. It took some time with the scripting implementation, but it was definitely worthwhile. Now, I love in-game interactables, so next on my list was a fully connected computer system that you could log into, discover files about the story, and be able to access controls like the room's lights or unlock some doors. The UI is made onto the screen using Surface GUI, and then I individually make each text, element, and frame, although sometimes I need to import images for more complex stuff like these semicircles. This whole reboot cycle is supposed to take your valuable time and your attention on the screen, and is especially quite punishing if you mess up like I do near the end of this calibration cycle. When it was fully implemented, I got it into my test map, which now has a bottom floor section in progress. First person is also working, and in this first section, you need to power the room using a circuit breaker model I made earlier. This is pretty modular, so I'll be able to use it more times later in the game, but it's a simple press down on a key really quickly, and it gets harder near the end. Those Seekers also have these statue variants, which are kind of creepy, but definitely not enough, so I'll probably need to rework them later. The new design aesthetic, though, for the map is much more office-like, with tile floor and new models, as well as a combination of these labs that you'll be able to go through. At the start of the game, the lights are randomly turned off, and when you turn on the breaker, some will turn on as well, but obviously, I still need this scanner light to see much at all. I was so caught up trying to beat the calibration minigame that I forgot I left a Seeker on the map and got jump scared myself when it opened the door. Scanners then got an upgrade so that I could tell the difference between contaminated and safe objects to pick up and interact with, as well as store which objects you've already scanned. A lot of the content is centered around simple but time-consuming tasks, and in a panic, you may not have the time to scan everything and you get to pay the price. Next up for the game I still didn't have a plan for. I realized that making everything procedurally generated could keep the skill difficulty higher for veteran players, meaning the whole map is going to be random every time you play the game, and perhaps some other things too in the future. The code itself was a nightmare since I needed to be able to generate a certain number of rooms without ever erroring, but I did finally get a functional version that has not failed yet, and it is pretty powerful. The upscaled version also includes offshoot hallways and additional rooms instead of just the primary route. The system will be really easy to work with since I just need to make template rooms that correspond to the correct size and door positions. Now that the procedural generator was working perfectly, I went back to the start of the game and made a whole menu area using the computer model as what you'll interact with. The finalized menu version includes your character in the background, emergency lighting, as well as a menu theme that I composed for the game a while back. The menu system allows you to create new files, which is basically starting a new round, but in the future I intend to allow you to save these files and pick up where you left off. Obviously, it is multiplayer and can hold up to 4 players, not demonstrated here, but you can kick players, adjust the lobby limit, and decide to make the lobby public or private. I may add a friends only option as well in the future. I started work on these new areas of the map as well, with their own theming and style, as well as upgrading the old map with material versions of the textures. Materials allowed me to add artificial depth, adjust how reflective it may be, and more, and really make it look like a polished build. Furthermore, I decided on a name for the project, which will now be called Biohazard, since you as the player must deal with many biological hazards throughout the game. On the topic of working on these areas, I had made a whole new door system that utilizes rigid constraints for smooth rotational animations like door handles. Furthermore, I had made a basic system for keycard locking doors. All this new map work made me realize that the Seekers looked a little outdated, so I started making a character in Blender for the first time and no prior experience. An early attempt used sculpting, but I would have needed to redo the mesh afterwards to be optimized, and it would have been overly detailed for something like this. Instead, I went into the body using outlines and broke up the geometry into more triangles via subdivisions. Ultimately, it worked rather well despite no prior experience and has some unique aspects. I did try texturing this in Blender, but I might consider getting Substance Painter for something like this. Rigging this was also a nightmare since I had very minimal experience for that too. Last but not least, the lockers are left, since what horror game doesn't have the players constantly forced into confined spaces? Actually, speaking of which, I completely forgot to mention, there's a whole new movement system upgrade from a while ago. I would never forget to include or show you something. Yeah. Anyways, back to the locker system, it was a simple matter of making some animations and then getting the player to go in and out as well as first-person tweaks. The locker itself uses rigid constraints to smoothly animate the door, and then I just write up some code to randomize how much of a gap there is when closed and so forth. The first person allows you to move your camera around based on your mouse position and see what may be outside the locker through the gap. It's as simple as trying to walk forward to be able to exit the locker. Following all that, I tried it out in the test map to see how it compares, and it is looking pretty good. Working on all these various systems, I've finally formed a plan for the game, and for all that I've done already, there is so much more I have to do to really create a professional Roblox horror experience. Biohazard is going to be the first randomly generated semi-open world horror game that you can play with friends or go solo, with an in-depth story as to what happened, items you can collect and use, various places to explore, and much to do. I'm taking inspiration from Alien Isolation and Alien Blackout to create a unique experience to Roblox, but you'll have to stick around until my next devlog to see how much this has to offer.